Hello everyone. So a big leak has come out stating that the PS6 could come out, in fact is on track to come out as early as 2027. This is coming from Kepler L2, and this guy's apparently leaked the PS5 Pro specs accurately in the past, and they often leak AMD related hardware stuff. And as you all probably know, the PS5 uses AMD architecture, so yeah. So there's some leak info about the specs of the console, but I won't be covering that part of it because frankly, I don't care. So this is genuinely depressing to me because it feels like this generation, the PS5 generation, was almost completely wasted. Compared to previous generations, we have gotten a painfully minuscule amount of first-party games. And it sucks because in my opinion, the launch of this generation was actually pretty damn good. I felt like Sony really came out swinging with the PS5, and then the output just kind of slowed to a crawl. And I know the PS6 will probably be around October, November of 2027, so that is a decent chunk of time from now. But I just doubt Sony will suddenly start pumping out games left and right in these last 2 years, right? Because I don't think the problem is that they can't get games out or whatever. I think there is a fundamental problem with Sony's mindset and business strategy, and I don't see that changing that fast. What I mean is, Sony has made so much goddamn money with the PS5 through other means other than first party that it seems like they simply just don't see the need to release any more first party games than they are now, because they get a ridiculous amount of money from third party games alone. You know, Fortnite, GTA, Call of Duty, the list goes on. I think they've come to the conclusion that exclusives simply aren't that important anymore, and as much as I want the old Sony back, I'm not even sure if I disagree with this conclusion from a business standpoint. That's just how it is as a business. If you can make the same amount of money by doing nothing, why would you work? And so they just don't. This is becoming a more and more widespread business strategy in gaming, if you can even call it that. How many really standout PS5 games has there really been? Like, look at this generation as if it's about to end. Like, say the PS5 generation is about to end in November of this year. Do you feel satisfied? Do you feel like you've played enough memorable first-party games this generation? Because I don't. Like, dude, such a small amount of games have come out for the length of time that this thing has been out, that it doesn't even feel like a 5-year-old console to me. Previous generations toward the end, I was ready for the next gen. I felt like I had played enough memorable experiences that I was okay with moving on. But with the PS5, I don't even feel like I'm ready for the next gen. I mean, the PS5 Pro came out very recently, and I don't regret my purchase just because of the performance boost on third-party games, but still, where the fuck are all the exclusives to take advantage of the Pro's hardware? Realistically, how many exclusives are they going to get out before late 2027? And you might be thinking, why does it matter if there's first-party games specifically to use the Pro? I'll tell you why. The reason I'm not just completely satisfied with third-party games using the Pro is because first-party games are optimized better because they are optimized primarily for one platform. Think of the PS3 generation. The things they were able to pull off with PS3 was mind-blowing. God of War 3 and God of War Ascension running above 30 FPS and looking as good as they do, they were some of the best looking games of the entire generation, and the performance was better than most other games at that generation. That is an example of what you can do with exclusives compared to third-party games. So just imagine what they could pull off with the Pro. Horizon Forbidden West is already like the best looking game I've ever played, and it was on a base PS5 and ran at 60 FPS above 1080p. They could go even higher. So you get my point. They seem pretty okay with just wasting this generation, and I really do just miss the old Sony. Not only did they care about the output of games back then, but they cared about pleasing fans, and they cared about the variety. Especially back on PS3, like dude, there was an exclusive for almost every type of game you can think of. They had it all covered. Platformers, racing games, hack and slash, shooters. They wanted to make as many people happy and satisfied as they could, and it worked. I'm not saying they need to match that 100%, but can they at least show like any amount of respect for the people who want to see these first party games, like, which is a lot of people? Where the fuck is Bloodborne? Not even a 60 FPS patch, no remake, nothing. This is probably the most requested IP for Sony to do something with, and they just refuse to. They'd rather leave the millions of dollars on the table. Everyone has been screaming, bring back the old shooters, Killzone, Resistance, SOCOM, and what do we get? Concord, Marathon, Fair Games. All of which are either massive flops or flops in the making, and yet they still won't do it. And okay, if you don't want to revive an IP entirely, because you know, that is a lot of work, how about some remastered collections? Like Little Big Planet, Ratchet & Clank, God of War trilogy, you know, like I said, the 3 shooters. It's not expensive or time consuming to do some remastered collections. sure is a lot cheaper than garbage ass Concord, I can say that much. There's a lot of games that are completely inaccessible unless you have the original hardware, and people want to play these games either because they missed them or because they just never had a PS3. And what sucks is you can't even really emulate these PS3 games because the PS3 emulator, RPCS3 on PC, sucks, and I'll tell you why. I know I'm going on a tangent, but I have to say this to further prove my point. People praise this emulator all the time, and honestly, I don't see why, because a lot of old third-party games run decently well on this emulator, but the actual exclusives, you know, the reason you likely get the PS3 emulator in the first place, are basically unplayable. Ratchet & Clank, God of War, any exclusive, they run like absolute shit on there. I'm talking like 15 FPS, and I'm not exaggerating, like literally unplayable. So basically PS3 games specifically are just trapped on that console, and Sony knows it, and everyone else knows it, and they just don't care. And you know, I've heard some people cope and say, Sony is saving the heavy hitters for PlayStation 6, and it's like, that doesn't make sense, because if that's the case, then I guess past the second year of PS5, they saved everything else for PS6 because they've barely released shit since then. If they're putting out games left and right this whole generation, and then they abruptly slowed down, that would make sense that they were saving most stuff for next gen. But in this case, it doesn't, that's not the case. It doesn't make any sense to me. Especially Bloodborne. Oh my god, the cope is crazy for Bloodborne. Bloodborne Remake is a PS6 launch game, dude. That's why we didn't get it for PS5. It's like, okay, maybe that's true now, but people were saying that like 2-3 years ago. Why would they deliberately skip the PS5 generation when it comes to Bloodborne? Like, there's no logical reason for them to do that. But anyway, that's about it. Let me know what you guys think. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.